Snipers from the east and west sit on opposite sides of a giant pit. There they guard against anything monstrous that emerges from below. Also, they might fall in love. This is The Gorge, an Apple original movie starring Anya Taylor-Joy and Miles Teller. Also, it kinda sucks. Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me from across the gaping chasm between us is David.
I come in peace. I don't know the Russian for that, so we'll just go with that.
To be fair, like, I know she was basically just doing a Russian accent from Queen's Gambit, but she is technically from Latvia. Do Latvians speak Russian, or do they have their own language?
I'm sure they have their own dialect at the very least. I can look up the language of Latvia.
I don't know. Just throw it out there.
Apparently it's Latvian. Yeah. Apparently it is its own separate language.
So technically she speaks Latvian. Well, in theory, anyway.
Yes.
She mostly speaks in English. Anyway, welcome everyone. It's a Sci Fi Movie podcast. We're here today to talk about The Gorge, which was an Apple TV Plus original from a couple months ago. I think it was around Valentine's Day they put this out, actually, now I'm thinking about it.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this stars Anya Taylor-Joy and Miles Teller, the basic premise of which is that there is a gorge somewhere in a mysterious location in which someone from the west and someone from the east guard on guard towers with lots of weaponry and things like that, and potentially there might be some sort of a star-crossed romance kind of forms out of the fact that these two start to kind of communicate, between the gap. But that's the basic premise, but we will start spoiler-free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into the spoilers. And of course, if you're enjoying the show on YouTube, please do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch if you do. And of course, you can support all the content and get more bonus stuff over at Patreon, but I'll tell you about that more at the end of the episode. So, yeah, I have to admit, I forgot Scott Derrickson was the director of this until his name came up at the end. I will say the feelings that gives me after you answer the question first. So, David, what did you think of The Gorge?
I just want to be clear. I didn't look up Derrickson's previous filmography, but looking at it now, I know exactly what Pete's going to say. I think The Gorge has a really solid beginning. I think like the first half of this movie is something really creative and something that I really got into and was really like excited by. Once we get into, strangely enough, the more sci-fi elements of it, it felt just more and more formulaic to the point where it ultimately ended up being a nothing film for me. Like it threw away all the goodwill to begin with, and it just kind of ended up being another streaming movie. The acting is good. I think that there is some good stuff there. Direction, again, it kind of feels like it's formulaic. I will shout out the soundtrack. We got Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross on that, so obviously it sounds great. But yeah, no, it's just plot-wise, that's kind of the biggest disappointment for me, because it felt like the first half was setting up this really interesting way of doing this sort of movie, and then it just threw it all away because we have to do the most stereotypical stuff that you could possibly imagine. So a little bit of a disappointment in that regard. But I mean, if you could just deal with the first half, yeah, sure, cool, go with that.
Interesting. So I think it has a good concept. I think it starts off okay. I think saying it doesn't fall apart until halfway has been far too generous. I think for me, it started to completely undermine anything I liked about the premise pretty much as soon as the quote-unquote romance started to develop, because I think the way they did it was far too rushed, and I think it completely robbed it of any of the kind of the beauty of this idea of like this silent romance developing could be. I mean, without getting into spoilers, I'll just say they meet in person far too goddamn soon. Like it's so early. So I think everything this movie could have done that I would have loved, it shat down the toilet. And even in the second half, which I cannot spoil or say anything about, even once it gets to the second half, and it technically does a couple things that I like trope-wise, it's so generic, and frankly, the back half of this movie looks like ass. It's awful looking. I hate all the compositing, all of the CG mist and smoke or whatever. Like, it just looks so generic and fake, and all I could see was actors in a green screen stage the entire time. I went from being, oh, this is an interesting concept, to, although they're actually doing tonally just things that I don't like here. There's too many songs being put into the soundtrack that feel like it's taken away from the tone that at least I think it should have. I didn't know tonally what it wanted to do at a certain point, because it started just hitting us with, cut to All Along the Watchtower playing, and then like, okay, like is it that kind of movie? Are we doing like a Suicide Squad, like, the pop song starts playing kind of thing? I didn't feel like that type of movie to me when we started, but I guess that's where we're at. Basically, once the communication starts and there's like a montage, that montage is where I started to lose interest in the movie pretty significantly, because it just started to, like, oh, this should be way slower than this. This should be way more kind of like, you know, bit by bit. It should be kind of realizing there's a bond forming between the two characters. It should be, you know, if I had my way, and admittedly the entire like second like and last third of the movie would just be completely different at this point. If they were going to meet, I wouldn't have done it until the last 10 minutes. I would have went almost the entire movie with it just being this silent friendship and the mystery of what the Gorge was. But this movie wants the pop song playing as they pretend to play drums on a bunch of pans. And the moment that happened, I was like, okay, I've lost interest in this. You have shat anything I cared about down the toilet, and now it's just bad. Mediocre at best. But honestly, by the end, some of the dialogue, like, we did the whole thing where Miles Teller's character is like, oh, he doesn't care about anyone, he has no one in his life. And there's a moment, and I know this is a spoiler to say this, where he later in the film actually says the lines, but that's all changed. I do have something to live for now. Awful dialogue. Terrible.
All right, so I'll agree with you for pretty much everything you're saying there. I think my one contingency is when you're saying the first half and you think that it's failed before that. I agree, but with the asterisk of, I think that I would have been okay with everything they were doing if it was stretched out, if it was put over the length of the whole movie. I agree that with that sort of montage section, it felt like we were skipping over all the things that, like, I kind of wanted this movie to be about, and then we just had to rush it forward because the script had the back half, and that's where they wanted this more focus to go into. I'll disagree on the musical bits. I think tonally, I kind of get where it was going. Again, I would have liked them to take it slower, but I get that they're coming from this aspect of, as they're getting to know each other, it's becoming more friendly, more aware of each other, and then the music is just to show that it's not this, you know, dirge where it's just everything's all sad and stuff. It's just this poppy, like, oh, we're finding happiness here, even though it's whatever. I see what I think they were going for, but I wholeheartedly agree that the first half of this movie, probably up until that montage, if they had stretched it out for the whole movie, I would have loved it a lot more than condensing it the way they did.
I just, like, there was, because I think there's a couple of alright scenes near the start. There's, I think, the scene where he gets the mission and he meets Sigourney Weaver, who's in the movie, and I thought, oh, that scene looks quite good. It's really high contrast. It's like, it's super, like, dramatic lighting with the light coming in the blinds, and like, but the other side of the face is all in shadow, and it's all very, you know, it's nothing super special from a script perspective, but it's like, okay, there's a bit of mystique here. It's like, okay, what are we setting up, so on and so on. And then at a certain point, it just kind of feels like, oh, I'm watching Electric State again. Like that's the feeling I got when certain songs started playing. I'm like, oh, this is just the default thing to do. You didn't have an original idea in your head here. It was just cue the pop montage. I don't know. I felt super cynical once we hit a certain point in this movie. And it's a shame, because conceptually it does inherently appeal to me more than a lot of other streaming movies do. But absolutely in the back half, I'm like, yes, this is just such a streaming movie in every goddamn way. And then it gets to the end, and I see the name Scott Derrickson, and I went, son of a bitch!
All right,
this
so explain to me
asshole.
Scott Derrickson. Yeah, tell me this.
So Scott Derrickson is someone that some people actually like in the horror community. They think Sinister was a good movie. It wasn't, but they think it was good. It was mostly shit. But there's that. He also did the first Doctor Strange, which I also think is pretty dodgy as well from a directing standpoint. I just don't think
That's what I was basing my I know how you feel about it, because I know your opinions on Doctor Strange.
I just don't think he's very good with pacing of things, and I think this movie reinforces that. I don't think he's really good at pacing out character stories and how their arcs progress in a way where I feel like things are earned. I also think he's a bad horror director, which does play a little bit of a factor in here, because some of the sci-fi here is definitely horror. If anything, there was a points early in this movie where I was a little bit worried that it was going to be more of a horror movie than a sci-fi movie. It does absolutely cement itself as science fiction at a certain point, though. But there was definitely some time where I was thinking, oh, maybe this is more horror. It was hard to tell from the trailer, to be honest. But
yeah,
you know, and then the Black Phone was okay. That's definitely the best thing he's made. But even then, I wasn't in love with the Black Phone. It still did some things that I didn't like. So I do not like Scott Derrickson as a director. I think his style as a director just feels I don't know, very hodgepodgey to me. It feels like he's just getting something thrown together in the edit, and it doesn't feel like there's a confident hand actually making decisions about how scenes are going to flow. The editing to me in his movies especially just feels like, well, we got it together. It's serviceable. It works. It cuts together and no more. And it never feels like, oh, there was a really conscious thought about holding on this shot longer so we could have this moment here at the end of this shot. Everything just feels very by the numbers in a very kind of dull, generic way.
Yeah, I'd say I agree with that. I will say I don't know Scott Derrickson. I would say most of his movies that I have seen, I don't think really have a strong romance aspect to them, as far as I'm aware. This one definitely leans a lot further into the idea of romance. And again, I think the promise and the show of what we got at the beginning of this movie, I'd say right up until they start communicating with each other, really makes me believe that it can work. It makes me think that like this might be a strong aspect, but then like immediately, as soon as they really start leading into the fact they're able to talk to each other, that's where it just kind of was like, oh, okay, we're going like a little too hokey on this.
It falls apart. Also, I forgot he did the Day the Earth Stood Still remake, which was absolutely trash. So, yeah, I mean, it says something that this isn't even like in his bottom 3 worst movies that I've seen, and I've only seen like 4 or 5 of his movies.
Damn, all right.
like I hate his movies. I honestly do. I think it's not like they're, you know, the worst thing ever, but they're so aggressively just under that mediocre line that it's like maddening to me. I was so bored the last like half hour of this movie, and and from a pacing perspective as well, like we kind of like do what is in theory the interesting stuff, and then there's another half hour of the movie pretty much at the end. Yeah. And I remember feeling at the start of that section at the end, and I checked the time and went, oh, that's looking at 25 minutes. I'm ready for this to be over. Like, what are we doing for the rest of this 25 minutes? And nothing we did in that last chunk was like justifying to me its existence. I was just kind of like, I'm just waiting for this to end. Come on, just wrap this up.
No, you're right. Without spoiling anything, they do an action. They do something that is absolutely the end of the movie wrap up, like the equivalent of the blowing up the Death Star in Star Wars sort of thing, where it's like, this feels like the big actiony ending where we got everything done. And then they keep going and they keep doing more. And then like they have a second one. They do it again towards the end. It's like, okay, but you already did this. You've had your climax. Why are we still going?
Yeah. So needless to say, I did not like The Gorge.
Yeah. It's more of a disappointment to me. It's not that I didn't like it overall. I think that the beginning had a lot of promise and a lot that really could have worked for it. But it's the direction that we decided to go down, it felt a lot more of just checking boxes than it did anything unique and individual.
Yeah. And I really can't emphasize enough just how ugly I thought the majority of the back half of the movie is.
Yeah, I saw that apparently, and don't look it up if you want spoilers, because it will kind of give up a little bit, but apparently it's based off of some Polish painter. It's impossible to pronounce the name. It starts with like a ZDZ. And the art in that is very striking. It's very well done, and I can see the like translations of it, but this is far more cinematized. It's far more of like, okay, well, that works in a still frame, but if we're really putting it here, and to especially put it in CGI, it's going to have to be toned down significantly, and it loses a lot of its punch because of it.
Yeah. God, and I also, just to throw in here, I'm not typically a huge fan of Miles Teller. I find him to just have kind of a resting punchable face, I guess is the best way to put it. Where buying into like, oh, I'm supposed to be rooting for and caring about him is one half of like a romantic pairing is a bit of a stretch. Not that I think like he is the least of this movie's problems, honestly. I'm not even saying this is like a big deal here, but it is something where, I like, he wasn't helping. I'll just say that he wasn't helping me get into it.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed Whiplash. That's probably the most I ever got out of him, and that's still more so on. I'm blanking on his name right now.
J.K. Simmons.
Yes. Simmons, yes. That's probably more on him than it was for Miles Teller. And then Anya Taylor-Joy has been in both good and bad things. It just seems like she's trying to get out there a lot and do a lot of roles. But I love the poster to this movie because it's a romance. It's got the two of them front and center on the poster, and it says Miles Teller, Anya Taylor-Joy. But then on the third spot for name-wise, it also says, and for you sci-fi fans, Sigourney Weaver's here as well. And I'm like, oh, okay. You just really had to make sure we sold this as a sci-fi by saying Sigourney Weaver's going to show up.
Yeah. I don't know what else I want to say without getting into spoilers, to be honest. I'm kind of...
I will say, I had to get Apple TV Plus for this. I did not subscribe to it beforehand. I've always thought, when I get some time, I'll sit down and I'll do like Severance and maybe like Ted Lasso and stuff all just in a row. But I had to start in order to watch this movie, and let me tell you, not worth it. Not worth just this. I'll go in for Severance and whatnot, but if it were just for this movie, not worth getting Apple TV Plus for it.
Oh, of course, yeah. Go watch Severance and feel better about your monthly subscription price.
Yes. I didn't want to commit the mental energy to doing Severance, so once I was done with this movie, I switched over and started watching the Monarch, the Godzillaverse tie-in show.
Oh, right, okay.
I couldn't sink my teeth into the first episode. I don't know if it's worth continuing, but...
It's not really. It's kind of like fluff that's got a few nice things going on, but it's not like... I mean, I'll give them this. Whenever Godzilla looks up, he looks quality-wise like he does in the current movies. Now, admittedly, he has like maybe 70 seconds of screen time across the entire season. So, they were really picking their moments for when he appears, but...
All right.
Nah, it definitely... to put it in terms that you will easily get, it is easily a tie-in comic to the actual main thing that's going on, which is the movies. So
gotcha. Would you put it above or below the Continental, the John Wick tie-in?
It's got Kurt Russell in it, so I'll say that puts it above the Continental.
All right, fair enough.
It's got Kurt Russell in it. That's something. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, it's yeah. I guess one of the other things is that it just kind of goes beyond like what I would have wanted them to reveal. I suppose. Like I think a bit more ambiguity to some of the stuff would have been nice. I don't think we should have ever seen other characters again. Once we set up our two main characters, I don't think we should have seen another character ever again, pretty much. Once they were on their own.
I got the feeling from this where it felt a lot of like a video game sort of plot, where it felt like the characters were going out of their way to get all the little hidden collectible pickups that explain the overarching story, rather than just going through the main plot and just like, okay, here's the thing we got to accomplish. There's a difference between going out of your way to explain the plot and letting it unfold naturally. And this felt like it went out of its way to get all of the mysteries explained.
There is absolutely an extended sequence where they just go looking for answers and just find them repeatedly in a row. And it's...
Yeah.
And there is a specific video game sort of thing that I want to compare it to, but it's kind of spoilery to do it. So I'll do it in the spoilies. But it's... Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, spoilers for the Gorge, because I don't know what else to say without spoiling it.
So what we're saying is definitely check it out. If you're not sold by this point, we definitely should have made it a top tier recommendation.
I cannot recommend it. Look, is it better than Atlas from Netflix? Sure, I guess.
That's such like a yeah. I'm pretty sure that watching paint dry is still better than Atlas from Netflix.
Is it better than watching Electric State?
Yeah.
That's
No,
close.
no, it is not.
It's kind of. I mean, I was just as bored by the end of both. To
Here's
be
the
honest.
thing. It's boring, sure, but Electric State just does a constant thing of talking down to you as the audience, of saying like you're not going to understand this complicated thing, so we're just going to like.
This does that. This does that
No.
repeatedly in the third act.
I don't think it talks down to you. I think that it's just a thing where they really want to reveal all of the backstory, and so they just do it. It's not a condescending way of doing it. It's just them saying like, we want to just show all the stuff we came up with.
No, I reiterate, that has changed. I do have something to live for. That is talking down to your audience.
That's not talking. That's just bad writing. I think they genuinely thought that was like an okay line. I don't think that's anything at all in terms of they don't think the audience will understand that they like each other now. I think it's just them saying that he has no better way to express himself, despite being a poet, which also is the weirdest character trait I think I've ever seen in a movie.
It has nothing to do with what the character is in the movie or what they think he can or cannot do. It's terrible writing, yes, but it's condescending writing. And that's what makes it bad writing, is that it's just explaining the obvious character turn for the audience so that we all get it because we're dum-dums. It's painful.
And if we're in spoilers section
We're
now,
not, well, technically we're not yet, but...
Okay, if we're in spoiler section now, then I'll leave it blank. But that bit where they're raising up slowly when they start playing "Don't Stop Believing" there, I really got Electric State feels.
Yes, he made that up for the record, everyone.
Yes,
before people.
But you'll never know. You'll never watch the movie.
All right, spoilers for the Guards. You've been warned. Both our main characters are snipers. They're both hotshot snipers for either side, east and west. And they're both offered new missions to go to the Gorge, which is this super secret area where there's a tower on either side, and he is given the mission by Sigourney Weaver, and he's not even allowed to know where it is. You know, the chopper drops him off, or I say the chopper. He dives out the back of a plane with a parachute. He doesn't know what country he's in. He does obviously figure out a couple things. It's something that I had already figured out. I was thinking about this early on in the movie. I was thinking, oh, well, it's winter during Christmas, so we're still in the Northern Hemisphere. And then he actually he says that out loud, like a couple of scenes later, where he's like, well, I know we're in the Northern Hemisphere because of the seasons. And I'm like, yeah, I figured that out, movie. Thanks for that. I'm like, do you think she's stupid, Miles? Do you think Anya Taylor-Joy didn't consider that?
She seemed surprised. She asked how he knew, so
which I also think's a problem. This hotshot sniper who can survive on her own in the wilderness didn't know about seasons being different in the upper and southern parts of the world.
Look, it's snowing all the time in Russia, everywhere, as far as I could tell from cinema. So it's as long as it's snowing, it's in Russia.
Okay, so. Yeah, and they do a whole thing where he arrives and there's this, like, you know, there's like a British officer who was there before. So I guess all the Western countries swap around who has to send someone for a year. They always go for a year and then they get replaced. And the most predictable thing ever happens. This guy is immediately killed by his own government when he leaves. He gets picked up on the chopper. Well, that's the thing. It cuts to him, and I was thinking, wait, why are we even showing any... Like, once he walked away after explaining the rules to Miles Teller, why would we ever cut to him? Unless it was because you're always killed after this, because it's so secretive that even the snipers who are here aren't allowed to know its existence, so they have to get erased.
That's the sort of thing. He's giving Miles Teller the whole rundown, and the audience by extension of, like, here's how it works, here's all this stuff, here's your tasks. And then... all I could think is, wait, you said like the guy before you knows all this stuff. Surely at some point there should be like a PTSD group for people who came out of this to like all meet up and talk about their stuff. The fact that there isn't means, yeah, no, you're absolutely not making it out of this.
Yeah, so he explains a bunch of things. This goes back to the 40s and the end of the Second World War, and the East and West kind of agreed to start keeping watch, to keep whatever's in the gorge down there. And there's no like concrete like answers to what is down there, but apparently the name on the West, at least, that's been passed down through all the Watchmen, is the Hollow Men. This idea of like and it's based on a T.S. Eliot poem. Like, you know, whoever coined that phrase took it from a poem and was like, oh, I'm an artsy fartsy guy. I'm going to name them this. And it's like, okay, fine. And it sets up that there's sentry guns, that there's mines that are all sort of like lined up on the walls of this gorge.
Yeah, I like the sort of backstory they give here, but this is one of the few movies where I would really like to see like the first gorge, where it's like, how did they deal with it when they didn't have these auto sentries and like all this other stuff? Because I feel like it would be a much more involved process to stopping these things.
Don't give them ideas, because they'll totally do a prequel if you keep asking questions like that.
Yeah. Give me a mini-series, put it on a streaming service, make me subscribe to Apple TV Plus.
Gorge Year Zero, or whatever they'll call it.
Well, I call it the first gorge to get the first purge, kind of mentally there.
But it's not another, it's the same gorge. It's been the same gorge the whole time.
I know. Plus, they couldn't even do it because they give the entire backstory of what happened in this movie.
That's true. That's not stopped them before with prequels. You know that won't stop them. They'll find some new wrinkles to throw in just to look, but somehow it'll match up by the end to what we heard before. They love doing that.
Somehow try to pretend that like it's a future version of the gorge despite the end of the movie, and then flashback be like, actually no, we were in 1953 the whole time.
Oh dear. So okay, right. So it's like, it sets all this stuff up. Also sets up you're not allowed to talk to your counterpart on the other side. And we've seen a couple of scenes with her. We see her visit her father, who's got cancer, and says that if he's not dead by then, he's going to kill himself on Valentine's Day. Which, like, it didn't like ruin anything. But even in the moment when this scene was playing out with her and her dad, and it set this up, I was like, this feels like it's trying really hard to do like some emotional bit of backstory for her to make us care. But it feels like it's trying just a little bit too much. Like, it feels heavy-handed in a way where, you know, I guess it lines up with some of the bad writing later on, but it, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. I by the time this movie ended, I really wish that I knew less just about everything.
Yeah.
And it kind of extends to her as well, where like, I think maybe if we were to stick with Miles Teller as our primary audience avatar, because he's the one who gets the explanations of what his tasks are and all that, maybe knowing less about her, and especially this backstory of like, at least seeing directly her father saying this, we can have her say it. We can say like, oh, this is this thing that happened, but have us come into this where the only thing we know about her is she is a skilled sniper. And therefore we can ascribe this sort of menace and threatening to her until we soften up.
Even then, I don't even need to know that. Like, the first time we see her should be when he sees her. Like, have it be this thing where it's like, oh, a human being. An attractive human being at that. Whoa, this is... all these feelings. Like, you know, this is weird. This is supposed to be the enemy over there. Like, that would be something. Honestly, that scene with the dad, in hindsight, was the first sign that there was going to be a lot of bad writing in this. Because I remembered thinking, oh, this is a bit rough, this scene. But hey, I like the premise, so I'll keep going. I hadn't like given up hope at that point. Right. But in hindsight, I'm looking back at it and going, yeah, that was really the first big red flag. So I think once it sets this stuff up though, and it's like we get a little bit of time of just him doing his duties, and he's, he finds like all the messages that have been written on the wall behind the bookcase of all the previous Watchmen, dated, year by year.
Which is great because none of them are helpful. None of them are like, hey, by the way, don't do this, do that. It's all of them have just picked a poem from one of the poetry books on the wall and they've quoted a line.
Yeah. And I think, like once this gets going and he sees her over there with these binoculars, actually one of the first visual things that I didn't like is, this is going to sound like a weird complaint, but the zoom on his fancy binoculars felt really fake to me. Like the way it zoomed in, there was just something really off about it. And I don't, maybe this is completely accurate to how the zoom in those things works or looks, but it felt like an effect. It felt like we zoomed into
yeah.
a thing in a computer rather than an actual optical effect.
No, as they were zooming in, I'm pretty sure I said out loud the CSI like enhance.
Yes,
Like
that's what
it's
it
just
felt
that
like.
sort of thing where it's like you can't do that. It just is whatever you get.
Yeah, that was a little thing. But the thing is so they start like doing the writing message because they can't speak. Obviously, they're too far away. So like she holds up a my name is what's her name, Draza, and like he's like, oh, we're not supposed to tell each other, but then she says it, so he's like, okay, fine, my name is Levi, puts it on the card.
She says it's her birthday, like she's drinking a lot, she's enjoying herself because it's her birthday.
And then she's like, she puts on some music and starts dancing, and says, let's see your moves, to which he says, oh, I can't dance. Well, she's like, well, what are you good at then? He's like, oh, I'm a good shot. So she challenges him to hit the bottle that she's got over there, and I don't even know if he declines. It kind of felt like he was just going to like get something, but she kind of responds by shooting like something he was drinking out of, like a little like canter or something.
From my understanding, that was like they were saying that there's a potato vodka still, which, as far as I can understand, I might be wrong here. That's essentially the same as like a sourdough starter, where you just keep on adding to it and you keep getting vodka out. And she just shoots it out. And I'm like, that's all this dude's alcohol. You just robbed him of alcohol for the rest of the time. What the hell's wrong with you? So then he gets his sniper rifle and ends up shooting the bottle off her side.
Yeah. So it's like a playful back and forwards. They're smiling a little bit. It's fine. Honestly, the bit I probably like the most out of this whole thing is after this night, right? The next day he's doing some maintenance where he's rappelled down. Actually, I shouldn't gloss over.
Yeah, get the thing first.
Yeah. So as they're doing all this, and I was thinking actually during this that, this music she's playing loudly, might that attract something from below?
That's kind of one of my little pet peeves here. Is as much as I didn't want answers or anything like that, I didn't felt like I fully understood the rules of it. Like, is it a thing where they will attack just at any time at random? Is it a thing where sound will attract them? It kind of felt completely arbitrary. They attack whenever the plot needs it, and not anything more than that.
But so she sees a couple things crawling up his wall, and he looks down, and she actually starts like sniping them off, and he's shooting them down. And it becomes this thing where then they're going up her side. It's almost like they're being tactical, these creatures, these monsters, whatever they are, and trying to sort of luring them from side to side. But they end up sort of helping each other by like shooting down from the other side when they're maybe running out of ammo or whatever. And it's like, okay, it feels like a little bit of like helping each other was there, which extends to what I really liked about the next bit, which is the next day he's going down and he's replacing the mines. Like he's sort of rappelled down and he's like replacing some of those. And just after he sort of set one of them up, he sort of picks up his binoculars while he's still dangling there, and he looks over and he sees her on her sniper rifle sort of pointed around his direction. But it was kind of like a sweet moment of like, oh, she's keeping watch in case anything sneaks up on me. She's looking out for me. And this was like, this one little moment represents what I actually wanted from this movie, was this idea of this like camaraderie, this like looking out for each other and having each other's backs, and that something forming out of that was what I wanted. Sadly, this was the peak of it, and everything after this, because literally after this is the montage where there's a pop song playing and she's like drumming on things and he's drumming on things and he's made a bandana around his head. It's the montage from like an 80s John Hughes movie. What the hell is this tonally?
It's look, I to some extent I get what they were going for. Again, from a romance perspective, this is showing them getting to know each other in shorthand and like seeing what they did. Here's the part that gets me, and I've seen multiple trivia bits about this. The first thing they show in the montage is them doing a chess game against each other, where like they hold up their moves and they have chessboards on either side. Obviously, Anya Taylor-Joy was in Queen's Gambit,
yes,
which is a chess thing. The very next thing they do is they both have drum sets, and they're doing like a drum thing going on, which of course is
Whiplash.
Miles Teller's thing from Whiplash. Apparently, this was already both directly in the script before either of them were even cast. So it just was a happy little accident, and both of them said, hey, can we not have that in the movie? And they got overran, and like they were put in the movie anyway. But it's such a strange little thing because I'm sitting there like, is this a call out? Is this just saying, hey, remember these two actors were in that thing?
Yeah, it feels a bit weird. At the very least, like, I mean, I still wouldn't like this because I think tonally all this just doesn't feel right for this movie. Like, the concept of this does not lead itself to a montage like this for me at all. I just think this is tonally incorrect. I just think this is a bad choice. But if you're going to have this montage and you're going to have these things that are kind of referencing these actors' past works, which I think feels a little bit cheap, it's a little bit Ready Player One, hey, clap because you recognize a reference. At the very least, do something funny with it where he beats her at chess and then it turns out she's like a drummer. Like
better on the drums,
yeah, flip the roles at the very least. Not that they really make it clear that one's better than the other, I guess, in either thing, but yeah, as it is, it's that, and then it's whatever else that we're doing, and it all just kind of like it skips ahead in time because we've not really said this, but it keeps doing like a month skip where it'll say September, October, December, and that's Christmas, so they've got little snowmen they've made, and it's snowing and blah 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 blah.
That's kind of where I got a little bit disappointed as well with the pacing wise of it, is that I think they had them begin in like August or July, somewhere around that time period.
No, it was like September because he even said later on it was fall when he left and it was fall when he arrived. So
that's right. Yeah, you're right. But yeah, because I remember the September title card coming up pretty early. I just couldn't remember if it was first. But no, it with the idea that they've explicitly laid out, you're going to be here for a year, and then they start in September. I was expecting this to kind of be stretched over that whole period.
You know, it's so funny because you're kind of making the point here that they were speeding through it too quick, but it's doubly worse because the movie actually ends around 6 months in. It doesn't actually go the whole year.
Right. Like they explicitly show like, hey, these characters will be killed when the year is up. Like they've shown that as the absolute fact of what's going to happen. But ultimately it doesn't come into play at all. It's not any sort of aspect of it because they stopped the mission about 6 months in. So it just kind of feels like a missed opportunity to let this be a slower boil by letting it happen the whole year long. You can still have a montage to skip multiple months at a time, but get us to the full length of the year.
Yeah. I mean, I agree in principle with what you're saying. I don't think it matters that much given what the rest of the movie does, but I agree in principle with what you're saying.
Yeah.
So then it skips to February, and of course she's all sad because she knows her dad's dying, or has already died potentially. And he notices she's crying, and asks what's wrong, and she says, "I wish you could be here with me." And this, even just her saying this, felt too soon. Him seeing her cry, showing concern, and her kind of trying to open up, felt like we hadn't earned that yet. I was like, no, we're not here yet, but you're ready for it, movie. So I guess we're doing it. In
terms of time wise, this is like 45 minutes into a 2-hour long movie. Like it's still very much early on in second act territory. Yeah.
I mean, I don't even like put it in those terms because they don't even meet until like 20 minutes in. It takes some time before they even like get to meet each other. So it just feels too soon, and it doesn't feel earned. And then she says, "I wish you could be here somehow." And the very next day, we just cut to him. He sort of like uses like a rocket launcher and like makes like a zip line out of like a cable and like fires it across. And she realizes what she's doing. She gets all excited. She puts out the fire and makes sure it's tied on her side. And he gets his zip line thing and he goes zip lining across. And it's a whole thing. And well, at first he says like, "Hey, do you want to have dinner tonight?" And sort of like says, "Can I come over?" And she's like, "Yeah." So they're breaking the rules. And
he holds up a big sign that says, "Are your parents home?"
And I this was another point in the movie where, and I'd already thought this about multiple things at this point, but I felt it strongly here, is like, he's going over there now? This should be Act 3. Act 3 should be when they're going to do something stupid and daring to try and see each other. Like, after we've really, like, got invested in the relationship and it feels like, oh, we should try this because we don't care what happens now or something. Like, but no, he's popping over there like it's nothing. He gets over, there's like a bit of joking that he smells, so he has to go and shower. And we get a pretty lukewarm, by the numbers dinner scene with rabbit pie and some music and dancing afterwards, them getting to know each other and talking about their best sniper kills or whatever, and the previous conversation we alluded to where they start talking about like where they might be in the world and what's going on. And honestly, none of it's that interesting. I felt like like, have them ask questions that either we're also desperate to know the answers to, or that we've not even like been able to like give us a question where we go, oh, I didn't even think to ask that. That's a really good question, or something, you know. Instead, it feels like they're just kind of going over the same things that the guy already told him at the start of the movie. It's all the same things that he's just kind of like going over.
Yeah. It's because we don't get her getting the rundown from her predecessors, so it kind of feels like the script has to explain what she knows as well, but not from her saying what she knows. It's assuming she knows nothing and Miles Teller explaining everything.
Yeah.
I think my ideal for this is, again, don't ever go down in the gorge. Like, if you have to, that is the very like third act. Like, we're barely down there at all. We stay mostly up here. But I think the only reason I would say get them to meet up with each other without going into the gorge specifically is make her like absolutely mortally wounded by an attack. Something happens, she is absolutely going to die unless he gets over there.
Yeah, he has to. It's a do or die situation.
Right. That is I think the only way I would say we have established that they love each other that much that he is willing to give up the entire chain of command to go save her, and then he does it. But this thing of like, I'm feeling sad today. It's like, oh, okay. Punk.
I guess the thing that I was thinking about a little bit in my head is a video game called Firewatch, where the main character talks to a woman over the radio, and like feelings sort of develop over the course of the game and the story, and you kind of get desperate to try and see her and meet her for the first time, and it's like, obviously they're not physically speaking to each other like audibly, but like I was sort of thinking that kind of vibe where the best version of this would be like you're desperate for them to see each other for real, like by the time it actually happens. Instead, it's happening effectively at the end of Act 1. Like, this isn't something we've built up to that much. This is something where we want them to have already had sex and basically already fallen in love before we get to the more actiony stuff. And it just feels like a generic blockbuster at that point. Like, it just feels hollow.
Yeah.
Like the Hollow Man.
You're right. You're right. Oh my God. It was all intentional. They were pointing out how hollow it was to begin with.
Who hollows the Hollow Man?
Miles Teller. Next question.
I'm getting whiplash here from all these jokes.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that by the time we hit this point in the movie, I had kind of just given up a little bit of saying like, all right, I feel like I know where we're going with this, and it does just feel like more generic. Because, like, you know, his whole way of getting over there is he has to put this rope across the gorge, and you know it's going to fail. It's going to get cut. How it gets cut is entirely up to the movie, but you know he's going back down there at some point.
Yeah, obviously it's the next day when he's going back. But it's like, they really present it as if, oh, this is just going to be something we do now, where I'm going to pop over like every other day to like just start having a relationship now. Like, it feels
I did
far
like
too
the
casual.
one line. Yeah, I did like the one line that he had where he's like, you know what I've been thinking about a lot, and she's like, how to get in my pants, and he's like, after that, like, they just specifically make out the point of like, of course this is just about getting laid after like 6 months of talking to each other.
Yeah, which I don't know. I just the whole, like, you know, she puts on the song, they dance, it fades away as they're kissing, and or even like when she's like, hey, you're a poet, you write poetry, and he's like, it's terrible. And she's like, no, tell me the name of the poem. You wrote a poem about me? Tell me, Miles. And he refuses. He tells her the name, but he refuses to say what the poem is, like actually say the whole poem. So
that way we could set that up for later. But yeah, no, it's like him being a poet. It's not the worst characterization, but it doesn't matter to the plot. Like, if there were any, like, him being a poet and then them specifically saying that Hollow Men comes from a T.S. Eliot poem, I thought was going to lead to some like inner knowledge of how to beat them, or something that like could come in handy of like, maybe this Hollow Man would be anything to make it matter. But like, it's such a little extra thing on top that is specifically there for the romance aspect, but it doesn't pay off.
I kind of disagree with that on principle. I don't think it needs to matter to the plot. I think trying to make it matter to the plot would actually annoy me more. I think if he had inner knowledge, because he, like, the fact that he knows that that's from a poem earlier on sets up that he is into poetry and knows that stuff. That's fine. That links up with the fact that he's into that stuff later. Cool, whatever. I think how it's used in the romance is terrible, and we'll talk about that more, especially with the ending. But I think it's okay for characters to have character traits or character interests that have very little bearing on everything else. It would be nice if there was some thematic things that link to the plot.
Right.
It would be nice if these two characters like forming a relationship and an alliance thematically meant something. But that actually, the thematics of this movie are actually kind of weird as far as the whole East and West thing goes, because we're told repeatedly, and it seems like down in the Gorge once we go down there, and we're not getting into that yet, but it feels like, oh, this was a collaboration between the East and the West for whatever reason. But at the same time, it's like, okay, well, why are the two sides never allowed to talk then? And it seems like are they still collaborating in present day with what they're trying to get out of the Gorge? Because I don't know, that felt a bit murky to me as it went on. Like, I didn't know.
Yeah. No, they just kept on putting hats on hats when it came down to whatever the end was. Because again, without getting too deep into it, they figure out what the Gorge is about, and they got to go through the whole explanation of like old video, film reels, and stuff like that. And then they eventually end up with, oh, wait, turns out the governments aren't even a part of this. It's all this private corporation. And then suddenly it turns into like, yet again, the anti-capitalist message. And while I'm usually all for that, this is so sloppily done. It feels like they pinned it on there because it had to be, not because they had anything to actually say about it.
Yeah, I've got more thoughts, but let's just to keep it going here. Yeah. He tries to go back over, but as that's happening, some of the Hollow Men are climbing up his side of the wall, and it sets off some of the mines and stuff. So it snaps that side of the rope, and he falls down. He does have a parachute backpack on, which I guess means he always thought there was a chance he might go down. So he opens that. She sees this, runs to get her own parachute and her own guns, and like goes jumping down after him. So we're down in the Gorge. We're down in there. That's like what we're doing. And for a couple of minutes, I was like, this is giving me like Skull Island vibes. There's like, big cockroach-looking things in the background, and there's, and the Hollow Men themselves, they kind of look like people who have mutated into like tree-like beings. There's like branches like coming out of them, and they've even got like horses they're riding at one point, which is kind of also where I was like, okay, what we doing down here now? Because I was like, is this like because the guy at the start theorized, oh, like I believe it's a portal to hell, and I'm like, well, I hope not, because that wouldn't be sci-fi, and we're putting it on the sci-fi show, so it better be something else. And it is, but yeah,
they explicitly say that during the early years of the Gorge, they sent down an entire like battalion of men to go investigate it on horseback and whatnot, and none of them returned. And so as soon as you see people riding on horses, like almost instantaneously as an audience member, you know what happened. You get exactly like, oh, people on horseback there, there's a horse. I wonder who that could be.
All of the people down here are the people who have went down. Both the battalion back when they first sent people down, and the people who were here originally, which we'll get to in a minute. And also, seemingly, maybe the people who were watchmen and have been killed and just dumped in here, because some of them might be down here as well.
Yeah, they don't really get into that. The weird part is much later on, we do have some level of modern tech, which I feel like is the bit in here that's not explained at all as to how the modern tech got down here.
I think it's implied, but so to get into it, there's some action here where, like, he's unconscious and hanging upside down in a tree at first. She's like fighting off some things. They meet up quite quickly. There is like a little moment when she lands in the water and you see something like come out of her bag and the camera focuses on it. And I went, okay, a black box of some kind came out of her bag, but I have no idea what that was. And then like when she meets up with Miles Teller, he's like, you brought the auto ascender, right? And she's like, of course I did. And I went, oh, that's what that thing she lost was. But there was no way to know what that was.
That, like, they visually hold on it just long enough where I'm like, I recognize that she dropped something, but it feels like I should recognize what it is. And as I looked at it, I'm like, I have no idea what that is. What the hell am I looking at here? And it's only after the fact that they established the audio center. I'm like, oh, okay, so I wasn't supposed to know what that was, I guess.
Do you know what? I would have been fine with it if the next time it was brought up was her looking for it and said, oh no, the auto ascender's gone. That would have been fine in 1-2, right? That would have been a fine 1-2. It's a little bit weird that you don't recognize it that first time, but the fact that they did it in a 3-part thing where we see it fall out of her pocket in the water, we don't know what it is, we have him say, hey, you definitely brought the auto sender, right? He says, of course we did. And then we have to wait another couple of scenes before she's like, oh no, there's no auto sender in here. It must have fallen out in the river. What are we going to do? I'm like, yeah, the audience have known this for scenes now.
Yeah. I guess that's kind of like what we keep coming back to, is this thing of the audience has already figured it out. The audience already knows. And then you take 3 more scenes on top of that to say, oh no, that thing the audience knows.
And of course, they go exploring. This is all badly green screened, and I really have a pet peeve of bad CG mist. Like, see when you get like the CG mist floating in front of them, and it can be done well where it looks fine, but a lot of the time it looks bad, and this is where it really upsets me, and it really distracted me. But
yeah, I watched a video somewhat recently that was basically explaining like why this is such an issue, and basically what it comes down to is like depth mapping, where anytime there's even a slight difference of depth, you need to have a slightly more opaque mist over top because there's more in the way of the character. And that's really hard for compositing, especially when you're filming these scenes like this, because you usually just have the one camera, and so if you're filming different subjects, they're like difference in depth, but you can't tell that from a single camera setup. The only way you'd be able to do that is if you're recording it like 2 cameras at the same time to be able to triangulate that stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like they had to go in by hand and actually just manually kind of like experiment with different layers and things to make it work, but they seemingly don't do it enough anyway. So they find like, you know, this like town down here that's obviously abandoned and like has, you know, it's overgrown, everything's like covered and stuff and whatnot. And it looks
very old timey, like everything's very 1950s-ish.
And they notice like some of the hollow men they killed wearing like old military uniforms from the 40s, and they're like, oh, this is, you know, strange, weird. And they eventually go into like, well, it looks like a church, blah blah blah. And this is where it gets into stuff where I typically really like this type of thing, right? I love in like an Aliens and the thing that this really reminded me of actually a lot was Resident Evil, is you go into a place where some bad stuff has happened, and you find like the evidence of the science experiments that went wrong, like what the mad scientists were doing that caused this whole thing. And so I usually love when they find like an old film reel and it's like a scientist explaining how things went bad. I'm super into that as an idea, but at this point in the movie, I did not care. I thought it all looked bad. I just didn't give a shit. But it's not just that they find one piece of evidence and like, okay, that hints at a lot and it lets your mind sort of start filling in things and you're like, oh, then this means this maybe, this means that maybe. Like they then find more things. They find like, they keep looking and finding more stuff and then eventually just straight up find a laptop.
Yeah.
And this laptop just like neatly spells out everything to them. Like he's just looking through all these confidential files and it's just flashing up on the screen quickly, but you get a sense of like everything it's telling him. Like, oh, there's like a fail safe there's a nuke down here that'll go off if the system fails. There's this, there's that. You know, this is the evil, and this was the part that really made it feel Resident Evil to me, is that there's a research like scientific corporation who's behind all this. That's the Umbrella Corporation, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So
I as much as I said I gave up hope earlier on, like I was still holding out a little bit here. I was still like, okay, as much as I'm not a fan of them like doing the whole action bit down in the gorge, there is a way that this could turn into something better. I can see that in my mind. But the moment we had the sequence of we broke into the old lab and we found the tapes and all that, it's just every single piece of evidence they got brought it down and down and down until I actually ran out of hope when it was the moment that they showed the nuke plan for if like everything became overrun, if it was too much to deal with, they were just going to nuke the whole thing. And they hold for like 3 seconds on the minimum safe distance of like, you have to be 4.2 kilometers away in order to be okay. And I'm like, why you just robbed the entire third act of all meaning if you just show that that's the case, because I know what's gonna happen. You just spelled it out for me.
Yeah, and it gets far too specific, and it like sets up things that like they set up a whole thing here where it's like, hey, we're all infected down here, and now this gorge has to be cordoned off, and the only thing, you know, like, and that's why like there's outposts up top to keep things from getting out. And you naturally question, okay, well, why haven't they just bombed it? And then, of course, it's not until Miles Teller gets to the laptop and he's like, because eventually Anya Taylor-Joy's like, why haven't they just nuked the site from orbit? Yeah, that feels like a good way to be sure. And he's like, no, because they're still collecting data. Because there was one moment earlier on, see when he was dangling on the side of the gorge, there was a moment where like a fancy looking drone came up out of the gorge. And that's where I was like, oh, maybe it is sci-fi, because this looks like an alien doohickey of some kind.
Yeah. I love the moment that came up, and like, you know, they're willing to shoot hollow men left and right. They're willing to do all that. But the moment this scientific thing comes up and then just yeets away, and all Miles Teller does is look over at her and go, and they just do nothing about it. I'm like, no, that's the kind of thing you call your superior about and be like, hey, I don't know if I'm supposed to kill all the weird looking zombie men and the drones, but a drone got out. Should we be concerned?
So it turns out that they're still collecting data from down here, and it was all about making super soldiers. It was all about giving soldiers stronger limbs and legs so they could run faster and things like that. So it's all mutation stuff.
Well, to backstory just a little bit on top of that, that's what they're doing now is all super soldier stuff. But apparently the original thing, the reason this was post-World War II, was that this was essentially the bio-weapons research in case Oppenheimer didn't work the bomb.
Okay, right? Yeah, that's how it started. You're right, yeah.
That's the reason they're doing all this.
That's how it started, but as soon as that kind of went away, it became about using it for enhancing soldiers, and then there was an earthquake, which caused all this to spread, and they lost control of the lab environment, and everyone started mutating. And the scientist explains that, and she sets up this thing. She sets up that if you're only exposed for a few hours, you might be okay, which seems very convenient for the characters. But if you are infected, you'll start showing signs of mutations within 5 days. And I'm like, okay, I guess that's something we're dealing with for the rest of the movie, is that our two main characters might be infected. And it's such a non-factor that it boils down to a couple of lines of saying, well, if we make it past 5 days, we're in the clear. And then it shows you at one point her like putting an X on day 5 and going, well, I guess I'm in the clear. I'm like, what was the tension supposed to be here? Like, I felt nothing from any of this. This was such a wet fart.
Just that sequence of her, she's in like a cave or whatever. And it just, once again, it montages, and she just like crosses out day 2, crosses out day 5, and then leaves the cave. And it's like, I'm sorry, we're not even gonna like pretend that they got infected, pretend that there's even a chance. We're just going to skip over that and say, nah, you know they're fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, there was never a single shred of feeling that either one of them might be infected or would have to deal with it or anything like that. It's such a nothing plot point. It should be a big plot point, but it's a nothing plot point. And then from there, so they get all the rest of this evidence and see all this stuff, and they're like, oh, that's what this place is. That's why they've not bombed it, because they want to still abuse it and use it, and blah, 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 blah.
They go a little bit I Am Legend for a second, where they're like, oh no, the Hollow Men are able to do tactical stuff because they like bait out their weapons ammo bag or whatever into the open.
And
so
set a
that's
trap.
a part of it.
Because she gets snabbed and like dragged into like some like old missile silo or something. I don't really have much to say. She fights back a bit. Miles Teller comes in at the last second and shoots him. That's really all it is. And all it really boils down to is they find some old vehicles in a a warehouse or whatever, and he's like, hey, these old trucks have great wenches. We can use the wench as the auto ascender. We can just, because the rope that he used to get across originally is still dangling down on the east side. So it's like, hey, we can still get up that way. We'll just get there and we'll take the truck up with the wench.
Yeah. That's kind of the weird thing for me. I guess there's nothing wrong with it implicitly, but it felt weird to me that because of what they said there, the rope was dangling down. That means that the gorge is wider than it is deeper. And it kind of struck me as it should be a lot deeper than it is wider. Like it felt wrong, the fact that they were theoretically like closer to the bottom than they were to each other that whole time.
Or at least about the same.
Yeah. And still, like, it feels like it should be like, if they're saying like, oh, this is a pit down to hell, it's like that should be at least like a quarter mile.
I think it disconnected right at the side on his side. So I think it is. This is basically saying it's like a, if you put a triangle, it'd be an equilateral triangle because it's the same size across and down. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's all right.
It just felt weird to me. Like I felt like it should have been the way they were describing it, the way visually there's so much mist and stuff like that. It struck me as if a strong enough wind blew through this to like move the mist slightly, you'd be able to see everything.
No, you see, all the experiments made like a super mist that's down there.
Oh, they've just got a big fogging machine down there.
Big
Whatever.
fogging machine. I didn't really think about it, but you're right. It does mean that it's only as deep as the distance across.
Also, as they're doing this, as they're doing the winch, they specifically drive past the big nuke
Yes.
to specifically show the audience, hey, remember that there's a big nuke here with a 4.2 kilometer safe zone.
So they go up. There's obviously a bit of an action scene as the Hollow Men are like climbing up behind them and try to get to them, and they're trading off like who's taking point on shooting them and like kicking them off, and eventually Miles stabs the tanker at the back so that there's fuel leaking down, and then they set it on fire. Which also does make, when the fire reaches up to the truck, there's still some fuel in the truck, so the truck does also explode a little bit whilst they're on it.
Yeah.
So that was a ballsy move, but ultimately they're able to get away. So this is your big set piece sequence. It does also, again, just feel very, surrounded by CG, like nothing in the scene other than them really, maybe a little bit of the truck for them to stand on is real. That's how it felt to me as I was watching this. It just didn't look very convincing.
It shouldn't have, but I was very much reminded of the jungle scene from Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. That's the kind of vibe I was getting from this.
Yeah, so they eventually, okay, we've cut the rope from this point down. We can just sort of go by hand for the last little bit. Which I thought was strange, though, is they didn't use the rope. They started climbing the rocks, and I'm like, the rope's still dangling right there. Why wouldn't you still use the rest of the rope?
Hold on. When is this episode coming out? What is this? Let me double check this. All right, we have finished Mission Impossible season. I had this exact same complaint in Mission Impossible Fallout.
Yes.
Where Henry Cavill did not climb the rope, and like it's just there. It's just saying, I know you had a reason for it, but like it felt the same to me.
But these two people are working together, and the threat of the Hollow Men is now, at least for a bit, been subsided because they've cut the rope from that point down, so they can just climb up the rope the rest of the way. And at least in that movie, Tom Cruise is supposed to be like a fancy rock climber who loves for that shit. He loves for that shit.
Yeah.
So anyway, they get up top. They're like, "Hey, it's okay. So we've got like 5 days, and then and if not, we'll have to kill each other and he's like, or ourselves." And he's like, "Yeah, I accept that." And okay, and she's like, "Hey, we could just run away." And they basically, without saying it so much, they basically agree that after 5 days, when they've not turned, they're just going to leave. They're just going to destroy the Gorge so that everything that's down there can't be used because that's evil and shit. And they're going to go to some place in France she knows where they'll be safe. And the reason why I'm pointing that out, one, because it felt like, okay, movie, end, time to end. This is where we're ending, right, movie? No, Sigourney Weaver's going to be back in a minute. To stay for that. But
well, they specifically have Miles Teller say, okay, look, I know I'm on your side right now, but I've got one of my monthly check-ins tomorrow, and if I don't do that, they're going to get suspicious and come here. So I got to go over to my side and do that.
She had a grapple hook gun the entire time. She's like, hey, there's a grapple gun just back there. And he's like, oh, you're better stocked than it. Like, why didn't she use that in the first... When you... I mean, I guess I know it was her idea, right? He did it without asking her to like send a rope across, but I just feel like this is... It's kind of like... If someone was on the island with Tom Hanks and Castaway and they watched him try to make fire for months and then they whipped out a lighter.
It's that moment in Who Framed Roger Rabbit where Eddie's like cutting the handcuffs that's linking together him and Roger, and then Roger just like pulls his hand out and looks off to the side being like, I think you're making progress. Like, it's that moment of like, you had a solution here and yet you let me do this whole thing.
So honestly, I think the real problem with it in reality is just that they need, for the sake of where the plot's going next, he needs to be able to get back across, and they don't want to make it a big deal. They want it to be easy. So she just has a grapple gun. Like, that's it. That's why she has it, is because it makes this part easy for the plot.
I mean, I don't even think you needed that much. We already saw that he could MacGyver it together. Even if they just said like, yeah, no, I know how to put one together, I'll do it as well. It doesn't matter how they do it. It just feels extra weird knowing that she had the capability all along and could have just been like, hey, send me the grappling hook. So
one of the scenes that really annoyed me the most in this movie is when he goes back across, he does his monthly check-in, and clearly showing that something has changed, the sort of, mystery voice on the radio that just sort of does the quick check-in. All of a sudden, Sigourney Weaver starts talking to him. She's like, "Hey, do you know who this is? Kane." Because that's his name. Levi Kane's his name.
Yes.
Okay. And he's like, "Yeah, I know who this is." And she's like, "Hey, did you go into the Gorge?" And he's like, "Oh," and she's like, "Oh, because one of the alarms or whatever, one of the silent alarms like triggered, blah blah blah." And he's like, "No, I didn't." And she's like, "Well, have you seen any activity from your counterpart on the other side?" He's like, "No." "Well, she must have went in," or she didn't even say she, because that wouldn't be known technically, but like your counterpart must have went in because you didn't, and that's must have what triggered the Gorge. Therefore, you're ordered to kill your counterpart, right?
Yes.
Is that a problem? And he says, "No, consider it done." My problem with this scene is that you're setting up the tension that he has been asked to kill this person that he's fallen in love with. And we're supposed to feel something for that, like it's anything like a big deal. But they have already agreed to destroy the Gorge and run away together. It is irrelevant any orders he gets now. It's not like he's even, like, there's not even a shred of him that would even consider that he'd have to follow this order, even if he doesn't want to.
Yeah.
It's irrelevant to him at this point.
I think that this order to kill could have been a little bit stronger if they also implied there was a chance that she was infected. Like, if there's this idea of, okay, like, I don't want to kill, but I might have to regardless, and then he would have been able to frame that as following orders to his superiors, but, like, yeah, the way it's structured, the way it is, the moment they say you have to kill her, it immediately cuts to the next scene of like, well, I'm not doing that, obviously, and we just continue on.
Yeah, because I think the drama you're supposed to feel here is this idea that he, in theory, is like supposed to do this, and he obviously cares about her now, and that part of it's just missing. Because even in the scenario you just gave me, like, she already has said, she's literally already said, if I turn, then I have to die. Like, she's already accepted that. So like, even like there's like no drama to come from this order. Like, there's zero. And then immediately after this conversation ends, it cuts to Sigourney Weaver in her like office, and I'm like, okay, we should not be cutting to her office. That's just pulling me out of the setting of the movie. But it cuts to her office, and she's like, yeah, we know they're a thing. As soon as they activated that laptop, we got the webcam footage. Like, here they are, they're together. We know they're working together. He's been compromised. We're going to go in and kill him tomorrow. So she's going in herself with a chopper of men. And it's like,
yes,
this is what we're doing for the third act. We're doing the bad powers that be are coming to wipe us out. And it's like, that would be one thing if you were setting up the idea that like our characters were like getting ready for that and knew there was a threat coming, or if it in any way got in the way of what they'd already planned. But it doesn't, because we find out that our two main characters are going to make the nuke go off by destroying all the satellites, right? That would basically take down the system and trigger the auto nuke function.
All right, and let me interrupt you real quick.
Okay.
What if the drama from the scene of saying like, hey, did you go down? You're going to have to kill her, all that sort of stuff, is not based off the idea of he has to kill her, but more based off the idea of he recognizes that they know, or at the very least, their timetables have been moved up and they can't wait the 5 days of waiting to see if they're going to die. They got to do this like now, because they could show up at any point here to check on him. I
mean, on paper, I get what you're saying. I don't think it really makes me feel anything, though. I don't think the movie needs that thrust at this point. No, I don't think so either. It just doesn't feel.
But I think that's probably more of what they were going for. This, because obviously, like, we see her have to go in the cave and she starts marking off days, so they don't wait the full 5 days. It is clearly implied to be the next day that this entire third act scene happens, but it's not very well conveyed of showing that that is the sort of thoughts he's thinking of.
It just doesn't feel like Sigourney Weaver and her team arriving impacts anything, and especially because it feels like, oh, that's the big third act. It's not the Hollow Men down in the Gorge that are the problem. They're not the enemy for the third act. It's the government, or it's the science corporation coming in.
What? Right? Humanity might actually be the more evil thing compared to the thing that's objectively evil? What?
Right? And so they come in and she like looks around his place because he's off like doing his plan, and she's like, oh, here's his diary. Oh, here's all these messages on the wall. Oh, what a bunch of nonsense this is. And they basically just wait around nothing really happens. But the only action that really happens is that they send a couple of drones after them, which they shoot down. But that's about it. All that Sigourney Weaver actually does in the third act is wait around in his tower, his guard tower, until she hears the alarm that the nuke's going to go off and says, oh shit, we have to go. And then they run to the helicopter, but it's too late, and we get the shot of the helicopter being consumed by the nuclear blast as it's going off. And it's like, okay.
Yeah. Just to be clear as to what specifically happened, apparently there's a bunch of cloaking satellites or like radar dishes that make it so satellites can't see this area. And if that ever went down, that's when the nuke goes off. And so they just strung together a bunch of explosives that were only able to be triggered because they're such good snipers, and they were able to hit this stuff from like 3 kilometers out and trigger all the explosives.
The idea is that they're already like far enough away that they can make the minimum safe distance in the time remaining once the countdown timer started. They've got enough time to get out, and they do a bit of tension in theory because Miles Teller's foot's a bit injured at this point, so he's like sort of struggling to run, and it's like, oh, is he going to make it, is he not? And that just leads to the last part of the movie that I absolutely hate, is that we have to do the, oh, we're going to meet each other in France thing, right? And she waits there in France after 5 days of quarantine in the forest, of course, like she said she would.
Yep.
She waits in France. We don't see him. We don't know if he made it or not. We saw him jump in the water as the blast happened, but we don't really get a good sense.
He falls down in the waterfall, and then it fades into blackness, implying he died there. But of course, no.
So we do the thing where he doesn't show up to the meeting place, and she gets all sad and opens the letter that he said, "Hey, if I don't make it, open this at sunset."
When did he give her this? Did I just blink during that scene?
It must have been before he went back across. It obviously had to have been.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it must have been, but like, I thought I missed it.
No, I don't remember it happening either. If they showed it on camera, I don't think I noticed it. But and it's basically just the poem. It's the poem that he said he wouldn't tell her. And she cries, and then it jumps ahead some time, and she's working as a waitress, presumably still in France. And we do the thing where she turns around, and he's sitting there, and it's like, yeah, I was a little injured at my last job, and that's why I was late. And I'm like, I just, like, you're having your cake and eating it too. You're doing the whole he doesn't show up for the thing, but then this is all you had. Like, if you're going to do the fake out where he doesn't show up and that means he's dead, right? And you're not doing some weird thing afterwards. We were setting up a sequel by showing that he's being nabbed by like scientists and they're experimenting on him or something, right?
Right.
If you're just going to have him show up because you want to build some extra tension and have like a big like, oh, we're so happy to see that he's okay kind of moment. This is it. It's the very next scene. She just like is waiting on a table and she turns around and he's sitting there. That's it. That's why you held it back for one more scene. This.
Yeah. I think like script wise, when it's written on paper, I can see the appeal of it. This idea of, you know, you flip the page and it says, and then everything goes dark, and you're left with that for a moment of saying, oh, okay, that's whatever. And then as you turn more pages, it gets the reveal of, oh no, actually he was fine. But like from a movie perspective, once it's put on camera, you know that you're not running the credits. You know that there's more that's happening there, and the scene that follows it has to mean something. They're not just going to make the ending scene a nothing scene. So it's kind of immediately removing itself where you know it's not going to pay off.
Yeah, because the whole like poem in the envelope, that's the character died, and the bittersweet thing at the end is like she gets to read the poem. But they do that and then have him show up anyway. And it just feels cheap. It feels like you're trying to have all the options, and it makes all of it feel meaningless. It all feels like nothing. And like I was saying, like I think it's when they come back up from the gorge where he has his whole, oh, they chose me because I'm expendable and no one will care about me and I've got nothing to live for. But that's changed. I've got everything to live for. And I'm like, shoot me now. This dialogue is terrible. And even Sigourney Weaver has it as well. Like, see when she's standing in the tower and the satellites get blown up, like she has to turn around and go, oh, it's the stray dog protocol. We have to move now. And I'm like, it's like you have to explain to the audience the thing that we already got explained to us when the other characters like figured out that this was a thing. I don't know. It just constantly just annoyed me and was insulting with its dumb dialogue. I hated it. And then the movie ends like it's like them kissing and the camera pulls back like it's the end of like Born Identity or some shit. Like and which is not an insult to that movie. It just means that here it just doesn't feel like This movie about this mysterious gorge and this like forbidden romance ends with like a happy romantic comedy ending.
Yeah, and that's where I feel like the biggest disconnect here was for me, is that this ending enforces what I thought the beginning of the movie was going to be. A lot more romantically focused and showing this sort of like slow burn, keeping them separate and yet still growing close to each other. And this kiss would represent the final peak of that, of saying like they finally got together. But because we had them already get together, because we had them spend the entire second half of the movie together, this part here just feels like we saw it. We already were here. This was already a thing. Sure, they've escaped the gorge area, but like this is no different from them spending time together in her tower.
Admittedly, I would have rather, even in the context of the movie you said you wanted, I wouldn't want them to give us the clear ending. I would like some ambiguity.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But, yeah. Yeah, honestly,
this ending feels like the end of that, at the very least. Like, that's where this ending could have been applied.
It feels like the ending of, like, I don't know, something about Mary or something. Like, it feels like a completely different genre.
I would love to see the hair gel scene in this one.
Oh god,
yeah.
I like that's. It's not even like it's the worst thing ever, but it has a point in the middle where I'm like, this is just aggressively mid, and then by the end, all of these choices, all of this like extended third act that I'm like, no, once we get out of the gorge, it should have been over. They should have found a way to end it as like have the nuke going off as they're leaving the gorge, so it's like a quick succession type thing. But no, we do this extended thing with the evil business lady coming in and all that shit, and
yeah,
I just. By the end of it, by the time we got to this kiss and the happy music playing, I am like, I actively hate this. I think I hate this movie. And we didn't even say it. Like when he takes the sniper shot to set off the chain of explosions in the satellites, that's when the dun 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 dun.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And I'm like, this is it's not tonally what this premise feels like it lends itself to. It's wanting to be this generic, both like sci-fi horror blockbuster with like a romantic element, and it's trying to like serve all these different things and therefore serves none of them. It serves none of them well because it's trying to be too many things, and just feels super generic as a result. This movie is shit, and I am happy to say it.
I also want to just just talk about the tonal whiplash of this. They do the final kiss, the slow like zoom in, zoom out, whatever it was, and then they specifically have the ending credits. You know, like there's like the black scrolling ending credits, but then there's the special like visual effects spending credits for the main cast, and it's like the entire gorge engulfed in flames in like zoom ins, and I'm like, that's not the romance thing we just. What is with this weird flip flop of like action packed but also kisses? Smallest little nitpicks just on top of things that we skipped over. He has a whiteboard to talk via. She has a paper pad. How the hell did she have enough paper to last anywhere near the amount of time, especially because she's writing like one message per paper?
That goes for a lot of stuff. It's like, okay, you say there's a good like storage of munitions and stuff, but like surely every so often someone has to refill all this crap.
Yeah. You would expect it to be like during the check-in or something like that. They just say like, what are you running low on? What do you need sent? And then just show like a supply drop or something like that. Something tiny just to show like, oh, clearly we do still have the ability to get something without human contact.
I mean, I think the first night, I mean, it's the first night, admittedly, maybe he brought it with him, but the first night he's there, we see he's having like a steak for dinner, and I'm like, hello, steak?
Yeah.
Where'd that come from?
I'm expecting a block of solid nutritional goo. I'm not expecting an actual meal here.
Or fruit and veg, because they say there's a garden, fair enough.
Yes,
but,
yes.
You know.
She does also, at the one point, offer rabbit pie, which implies that she's just spending her time outside the tower catching the wild animals, which also would imply that you should be able to tell where you are based off of the wildlife as well.
Yeah. Also, have you ever heard of rabbit pie before? Have you ever heard those two words go together?
Pie, no. I haven't heard of rabbit pie. Rabbit stew,
sure.
Yes. And I feel like you can fill a pie with any type of stew and it would work.
That's true. That's true. And keep in mind, so, you know, I'm Scottish, I'm in the UK, right? Pies here are usually meat inside a pastry, right? Like a meat pie is what a pie is here. That's not to say that other types of pie aren't pies. It's just that that's what we think of when we say pie first.
Right.
You know, because don't get me wrong, you give me a nice lemon meringue pie, I'm interested. Like you've piqued my interest, right?
Yeah.
Apple pie, you can shove that up your arse. It's awful. But
hold on, baby. American apple pie, like those are synonyms. You can't just piss off that much of the audience.
I'll piss on it.
Oh my!
It turns out you can piss on hospitality. Okay.
Look, I'll be the patriotic one here. We got our American Pope.
Oh, I wasn't paying attention. I didn't realize the
conclave. From Chicago.
It picked an American. Okay, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any jokes. I don't know. I watched Conclave like a month ago, so it felt weird that I watched that, and then like 2 weeks later, they're having a conclave because the Pope died.
Some joke about how the Italians are all pissed off about the idea of a Chicago deep dish pizza. That's about all I got.
Yes. I've never had a Chicago deep dish pizza. I'm sure it's nice, but it's definitely not what I'm thinking of when I think of pizza.
No, definitely not. I actually went to Chicago and I somehow neglected to get a deep dish while I was there, so I need to correct that at some point.
Yeah. Anywho.
Oh yeah, is there a movie? Sorry.
There's a movie, it's The Gorge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I don't know if you didn't react to my Troll 2 reference, and I'm deeply upset by it. I'll say that.
I'm very sorry. I heard the piss on hospitality. Yeah. I am aware.
Yes.
Clap.
Now you'll have to make a new hole in your belt so you don't feel hunger pains. Anyway, final scores for The Gorge.
I'm trying to figure out what side of the 5 I'm on, honestly. It's around that range at the very least.
I know exactly which side of the 5 I'm on, but you continue.
I'm trying to do this subjectively, but I do see the promise in it. I see the idea of, strangely enough, what I was thinking of going into this was the web series from Halo, Red versus Blue. Because the entire beginning of that is the two opposing sides that are literally in the Gorge. The name of the map is the Gorge. And it's just, I can see this being something where you take that, but you put a more dramatic, romantic angle on it, and then there's this sci-fi twist that keeps things actiony and pulse pounding. But it immediately tossed that away, made it its own thing, and made it this generic ass, we got to fight the bad things, and capitalist group is doing bad things as well. So, yeah, I think I'm beneath the 5. I don't want to sink too far down because it is, I think, unoffensive. It's just boring. So I'm gonna go with a 4.5. I think that's kind of where I'm sitting at with it. It's close to the 5 range, but it's just kind of unoffensively bland by the end of it.
I mean, similar feelings, but I'm going to go with a straight 4. It screams 4 out of 10 to me. It's under that line where I do think it's bad. I regret spending my time on it.
I regret signing up for Apple TV Plus for it.
At least you can watch some other good things, though, while you've got it.
I can. Yeah. True.
All right. You got some options there. And I'll make sure we do another Apple TV movie right after, like, another month's pass. Just a month and a bit.
Right as soon as my free trial ends. Thanks for that one.
Then why are you whinging then? You've got a free trial.
Yeah, that's only 7 days though, to be fair. It's not a full month. There ain't no way we get into anything else.
Anyway, yeah. So rough time. Did not like this. Like it started off okay and it just got worse. And I think it's even more disappointing in a lot of ways because I do see a lot of things I like in the premise, and then it just kept going further away from it, amongst the other things. So
I actually I didn't say this up front. I have a family member who I was talking about. I think it was Caddo Lake back when we had just watched that, and they were like, "Oh yeah, I saw that." And then they mentioned I also saw The Gorge recently, and I was like, "Oh, I remember that being on the schedule." And they spoke not highly of it, but they said they enjoyed it. So I at least went into this with those expectations, but nah. Just wasn't there.
I hope next time you see this family member, you do a little follow-up conversation.
there are very few people that I'm willing to go back to somebody if they've said something I've done for the show and tell them, you're straight up wrong. That was trash.
Yes, but this is one of those people, though, right?
It's on the border. I might have to ease into it.
Oh, come on. Scorched earth. Go on. Who cares? There's family.
Yeah.
Cut ties.
This isn't even family. This is someone from my fiance's family. This isn't someone I'm even fully blood with yet. And I'd just be like, actually, you're wrong. And here's an hour and 40 minutes as to why.
Like, I'm not saying you should completely, like, piss off the entire, like, in-law, like, portion of the family. But at the same time, do it. That's the show pretty much. So this is the first of 2 episodes this week, bizarrely. Although the next one is not a regular episode because we let Collector's Cut take the ace slot last week. Later this week on Saturday, publicly anyway, Friday for Patreon, there will be our countdown episode. We're going to do a top 10 sci-fi movies of the first half of the decade. That being 2020 to 2014, those 5 years. And we will have...
You said 2014?
Did I? I meant 2024.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2020 to 2024.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's what's coming up next, later this week. So look forward to that. And then we've got a new release. We got the Predator animated movie, Killer of Killers, for next week. But so that'll be there. Worth mentioning as well, there'll be a special extra bonus for Patreon for the top 10. The video where we actually make the top 10 will be exclusive to Patreon. And then the episode that gets released publicly will be us presenting the top 10 to everyone, which is a joint top 10.
Public-facing video is going to be us all smiley like, yeah, no, I really like this, do that. The Patreon one's going to be like, you stupid son of a bitch, how dare you?
Yes, there will be anger, there will be shady deals made to try and ensure certain things make the list.
Mutually assured destruction on both sides.
That's it. I don't know how much David's going to disagree with the things I think should be there. We've not done it yet, so I don't know, but we'll find out.
I'm going to purposely, before we go into recording, watch a bunch of videos on YouTube that make me angry, just so I can come in like guns blazing.
Well, that's the show, everyone. Of course, David's got his homework movie, so we'll get to that in a minute. But up first, I'll just tell you, you can get bonus content over in Patreon. Like, occasionally, we may have a bonus thing like that list feature, but that's a one-off every so often. What we actually do on a regular basis is me and David do 2 monthly shows on Patreon. We do Criterion Cut, where we review movies from the Criterion Collection, stuff like Akira Kurosawa films, Ingmar Bergman films, stuff of that nature. There's a whole back catalogue now. And then the other show we do monthly on Patreon is Extra Reels, where we do some of the worst things ever made. I previously referenced Troll 2. That was one such episode.
Yes. We
have done Neil Breen films. We have done movies starring Hulk Hogan. We have done all sorts of shenanigans. In fact,
coming up soon, we've got a Superman tie-in
starring Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah, take your guess what that is.
Yes, Shaq. I mean, let's be honest. This movie's a loser man. I knew who Shaq was when I was a kid because basketball wasn't a thing in the UK. So. Yes, if you want to support the show or any of the shows on Male Fuzz Movies, you can do it on Patreon. You can also do it via YouTube membership or super thanks on YouTube. Any support from any direction is greatly appreciated. But regardless, go check out the bonus content if you want to.
Yes.
David, every episode of Ace goes back and watches a homework movie. Although he won't do that for the top 10, just to be clear. That's like a different type of episode, so he won't do it for that. But... yeah, so what was your homework movie this week?
Well, as you said, we've got the list coming up, and people may note that in previous episodes, I was trying to marathon my way through Jurassic Park, because technically, Jurassic World Dominion does fall under the level of, could it be on the list?
And Rebirth is coming up. Rebirth's coming up, so you had to do this anyway.
But I did at least have 3 extra episodes to get that done. Dominion does not make the list.
Well, you've not heard what I think of Dominion, yeah.
I believe I've seen all I need to see. It's... Look, I already felt like Fallen Kingdom was stupid in a lot of ways. I think they made a lot of...
Can I stray? There's 2 things I want to say, right? And they're both basically jokes about the same thing. But I remembered making the joke after I saw the movie that you could sum up my entire feelings on Jurassic World Dominion by posting a clip from the original Jurassic Park. And it's the scene where he goes, Dodson! We got Dodson here! See, no one cares. That's it. That's the entire feeling of the movie.
That's not the gif I thought you were going to go for, but yeah, fair enough.
You thought I was going to say a great big pile of shit. But no, this was something ultra specific that fit it perfectly. Also, you could make the joke, and I'd say this because I'm comparing it to another franchise here, because I think it's very fitting a comparison, but somehow Dodson returned.
Yeah,
anyway, off you go.
That's the biggest part for me is, I watch Fallen Kingdom, and they got I think it was bookends. I think it was beginning and end of the movie was Dr. Ian Malcolm showing up and giving a little bit to Congress or whatever, saying like, dinosaurs and whatnot. This movie, like, I could feel the money people behind the scenes at every point saying, fit in more references to the things that people liked in the original. And they say, you mean the original trilogy? And they say, no, Jurassic Park 1 specifically. And dear God, did they do everything. They pulled out all the stops, and all I could feel the entire way through was not this feeling of, oh, good, they got this person back. It's, oh, you really didn't have anything else going on, did you? That's kind of what the entire movie was for me.
They got the original trio of characters back, and they're investigating locusts or something. Like, that's what we're doing with them. They're like spies who are doing like scientific espionage. What?
Look, what? Much of the same. It's not even scientific espionage. It's this idea that they have genetically made locusts to eat the world's like crop supply, unless those crops are specifically from this specific corporation that also made the locusts, therefore making it so they are now in control of the world's food, blah, blah, blah. Look, this is 2 movies in a row I had to watch that theoretically have a very anti-corporate, anti-capitalistic message, which usually I'm all for. But these are the worst examples of that, to the point where I feel like they don't believe this, and they're trying to just throw out whatever it is to make a purposefully awful point that can be picked apart and said, well, no, clearly this is the wrong way to do things. I don't know. I beginning to end of this movie, I was never engaged. I never felt like I gave a crap about any of the subplots that were going on. And by the time it hit the end of it, and it felt like, and that's our trilogy, and that is like the whole story has been told, I was already like, and you failed top to bottom. There was never a moment where I was like, yeah, great job. You've successfully carried on the name of Jurassic Park. So
it's trash. It's laughable trash at times.
It is. I mean, occasionally there are 1 or 2, I wouldn't even call them action scenes, but just like moments of tension that I thought were okay. But the part that got me was towards the end of the movie, you have all the people we cared about from the previous trilogies, or previous 2 movies. You have all the people that we care about from Jurassic Park 1, and then you have like 2 or 3 characters that were introduced in just this movie, and they've all coalesced into a group. And it's like 12 people that are all trying to do their thing at the same time. I'm like, that's too much for a survivor group.
It's the Ghostbusters.
You put too much.
It's the Ghostbusters Frozen Empire?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. It's the same problem with that, where at the end, there's like 15 Ghostbusters, and they all have nothing to do. Like, it's like, there may have been some interesting stuff with like Alan maybe bonding with Chris Pratt's character, because wait, you've trained raptors? Oh, let's talk about that, because that would interest him greatly. But like, yeah, no, they do that every once in a while. But like every once in a while, they'll look over at Chris Pratt and be like, "Wait a minute, raptors?" And he goes, "Yeah, I know." And it's like, that's it. That's the only link they have here is, wait a minute, raptors are bad. And Chris Pratt goes, actually, not always. And that's it. That's the character link. Yeah, I mean, this one still feels relatively fresh because it's only a couple of years old, and it pissed me off a lot. So I have my feelings have not subsided. Like, I still remember my anger. Yeah. So
no, I just top to bottom, like as soon as we started that movie, I was already pissed off just from the framing device and them saying like, "Hey, remember how the last movie ended with dinosaurs getting out and that one business got shut down because they were completely inept at it? Now we got another business who's doing the exact same thing." And my one hope for Jurassic Park Rebirth, Jurassic World Rebirth, is that they just stop with the idea of genetic modification being this uber god tool and instead just say dinosaurs are fun, and however we manage to get there is however we manage to get there, but like we don't have to go into the implications of but what if genetics.
I mean, I can tell you the premise if you like from the trailer.
No, I'd rather go in blind. Okay. I don't want to know. I haven't seen the trailer.
That's fine.
Yeah, so overall rating 3.5.
It's the worst one. Yeah. Like, it's absolutely the worst of the 6. There's no question.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah. That's the thing is I kept on expecting it to be a thing where modern studios and like the amount that they would be able to make the dinosaurs feel real would counteract the things that I disliked more from like Jurassic Park 2 and 3. But if anything, they just pumped them up more and made those things worse over time.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I'll happily go back to 3 and just enjoy the B monster movie that it is versus whatever convoluted nonsense Dominion was.
Yeah.
Remember
Tara gave that a 6. How did Tara give that a 6?
Remember the shaving foam? Remember the shaving can? Remember that?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Remember it's sitting on his desk. It's right there. Callback. It's the thing.
God, I hate that movie. Anyway, that's the show, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. This has been the Atomic Cinema Experiment. We will see you next time. But thank you very much for joining us. Keep watching science fiction and computer at Salsa.